I was still clutching the $3,000 restaurant receipt, the paper a physical manifestation of my humiliation, when my husband finally turned to me, his eyes meeting mine with a chilling indifference. "You should wait outside," he stated, his voice devoid of warmth. "This is a family dinner. We were at Ambrosia, a place so pretentious it made your average five-star establishment look like a diner. The kind of place where the lighting was so dim you practically needed night vision goggles to read the menu, and where, predictably, prices were a closely guarded secret. His entire family was there. His parents impeccably dressed and radiating an aura of entitled disdain. His sister polished and sharp-tongued. Her husband a carbon copy of her father, silent and judgmental. I had orchestrated the entire evening, navigated the labyrinthine reservation system, and chosen Ambrosia specifically, hoping to impress them, to finally feel like I belonged. It was supposed to be a celebration, a toast to his recent promotion to regional manager. From the moment I arrived, however, I felt like an outsider, a trespasser in their carefully curated world. They talked around me, their conversations a private club with an unspoken membership fee I couldn't afford. They laughed at inside jokes, anecdotes from a shared history I wasn't privy to. When I attempted to contribute, to bridge the chasm that separated us, my efforts were met with polite indifference, thinly veiled impatience, or a swift change of subject. I retreated into myself, questioning my perception, wondering if I was simply being overly sensitive. The dinner stretched on, an agonizing parade of extravagance. Everyone ordered with reckless abandon, seemingly immune to the concept of fiscal responsibility. Lobster the size of small dogs, steaks marbled with enough fat to clog an artery, vintage wine flowing like water. Not a single glance was spared for the price column on the menu. Too was still clutching the $3,000 receipt in my hand, its edges starting to soften from the heat of my palm, when my husband, Mark, finally turned to me. His eyes, usually warm and inviting, were now cold, distant. "You should probably wait outside," he said, his voice clipped and devoid of any warmth. "This is a family dinner. We were at Le Fleur, a restaurant so exclusive it felt like entering a different dimension. The kind of place where the lighting was so dim you could barely see your food, and the menus, bound in leather, didn't dare display prices. Mark's entire family was there, a constellation of privilege and unspoken expectations. His parents, Richard and Eleanor, his impeccably dressed sister, Bethany, and her equally polished husband, Charles. I had been the one who secured the reservation, spending weeks navigating the snobbish maitre d', and meticulously planned every detail. The dinner was meant to be a celebration, a joyous occasion to mark Mark's recent promotion to senior analyst at his firm. But from the moment we arrived, a subtle, almost imperceptible chill permeated the air around me. They spoke around me, their voices a low hum of shared history and experiences I wasn't privy to. They laughed at inside jokes, glances exchanged, and knowing smiles that excluded me. Whenever I attempted to contribute to the conversation, my words seemed to dissolve into the background, ignored or met with a swift change of subject. I fell silent, a knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach. Maybe I was just being overly sensitive, I reasoned. The dinner stretched on for what felt like an eternity. One opulent dish followed another, lobster glistening under the soft light, steaks marbled with fat, and multiple bottles of vintage wine, each more expensive than my monthly car payment, flowed freely. No one so much as glanced at the prices on the menu. I naively assumed they intended to split the bill evenly. When the check finally arrived, presented on a silver platter with a flourish, the waiter placed it squarely in the center of the table. A collective silence descended, broken only by the clinking of silverware. No one made a move to reach for it. Mark gave me a quick, insincere smile. "Honey, could you get this one?" I completely forgot my wallet. Then, like a carefully orchestrated domino effect, the excuses began. Bethany claimed she had left her purse in the car, a lie so transparent it hung in the air like a bad perfume. Richard, his face etched with faux surprise, declared he hadn't expected to pay tonight. Eleanor, with a dismissive wave of her hand, simply laughed and said, "You're doing so well, aren't you, dear?" I was trapped. I didn't want to create a scene in such a public and pretentious setting, so I swallowed my pride and pulled out my credit card. The number swam before my eyes as I swiped my card and signed the bill, my hand trembling slightly. They continued their laughter and conversation as if nothing had happened, completely oblivious to the weight of what I had just done. As soon as the payment was processed, Bethany, ever the social butterfly, jumped to her feet. "Let's take a family photo," she exclaimed, her voice brimming with forced enthusiasm. They all gathered together, posing and smiling for the camera. A picture-perfect tableau of familial bliss. I rose to join them, hoping to at least feign inclusion, but Eleanor stopped me with a delicate hand on my arm. "Oh no, dear," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "We just want one with the family." Confusion washed over me. I turned to Mark, searching for some sign of support, some flicker of understanding in his eyes. But his gaze was unwavering, his expression neutral. "You should wait outside," he repeated, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. I stood there for a moment, frozen, unsure of what to say or do. No one else acknowledged my presence. They were already posing, their smiles fixed and vacant. With a heavy heart, I turned and walked towards the exit. I stood by the imposing front door, the cold night air a stark contrast to the suffocating warmth of the restaurant. The receipt was still crumpled in my hand, a physical manifestation of the humiliation I had just endured. I smoothed it out and looked at it again. The total was stark and undeniable, $3,000. I took a picture of it with my phone, a digital memento of the surreal evening, and just stood there, numb. Something within me shifted in that moment, a tectonic shift in my perception of everything I thought I knew. After paying for that exorbitant dinner, after swallowing their snide remarks and passive-aggressive jabs, they had the audacity to treat me like an outsider, like I didn't belong. They had no idea the magnitude of what they had just done. The silence outside the restaurant was deafening, but it held a profound significance. I had always strived to be kind, understanding, and patient, bending over backwards to please them. But now the veil had been lifted, and I saw them clearly for who they truly were. And they, in turn, were going to remember this night because I was going to make damn sure of it. I grew up in Harmony Creek, a small town where everyone knew everyone else's business. My parents worked tirelessly, my dad at the local mill and my mom as a waitress at the diner. We didn't have much, but we had each other. I learned the value of hard work and self-reliance from a young age. I poured myself into my studies, working part-time jobs to pay my way through college, and later, bootstrapping a small tech company. It wasn't easy, But after years of relentless dedication, it finally started to flourish. I didn't become a millionaire overnight, but I was doing well, better than I ever imagined. I had my own condo downtown, a comfortable income, and the freedom to live life on my own terms. I didn't rely on anyone. That's when I met Mark. He came from a world that seemed to exist on a different plane of reality. A family that appeared flawless on the surface. A sprawling estate in the suburbs, private schools, lavish vacations to exotic locales, and a prestigious family name they wielded like a weapon. But it was all just a carefully constructed facade. A veneer of wealth and privilege that masked a deeper rot. He spoke with the confidence of someone who had never known financial hardship. First, I found it charming, even alluring. He told me he worked in finance, and I believed him without question. As we started dating, however, I noticed a pattern emerging. He rarely, if ever, reached for the bill. He always had an excuse ready. He'd forgotten his card, his paycheck was delayed, or he was having a particularly bad month. I didn't think much of it in the beginning. I was happy to pay. I enjoyed being generous, and I wasn't keeping score. I genuinely believed we were building a future together, and that things would eventually even out. His parents were superficially polite, but I could sense their disapproval, their subtle disdain simmering beneath the surface. They asked pointed questions, thinly veiled attempts to assess my worth. What does your father do, dear? Are you renting? Or do you actually own your place? Things like that. I brushed it off, determined to win them over. I wanted to be accepted into his world, to prove that I was worthy of their son. After we got married, the truth began to unravel. Mark wasn't doing well financially. In fact, he had virtually nothing saved. His finance job barely covered his expenses. He was drowning in credit card debt and had no concrete plan for the future. When I offered to help, he readily accepted, his pride seemingly non-existent. I ended up paying for the majority of our expenses. Our apartment, groceries, vacations. I even helped with gifts for his parents and sister, carefully selecting items that would impress them. They all assumed Mark was the provider, completely unaware that it was all coming from me. Still, I remained silent, clinging to the naive belief that love was more important than money. I convinced myself that if I remained patient and supportive, things would eventually improve. I desperately wanted his family to like me, so I played along with their charade, enduring their subtle jabs and condescending remarks. I smiled politely when they excluded me from conversations, and I bit my tongue when they made decisions without consulting me. I just wanted peace to avoid conflict at all costs. But something irrevocably changed after that dinner. It wasn't simply about the money, although $3,000 was not an insignificant amount. I had spent more before without a second thought. It was about the way they treated me, the blatant disrespect, the feeling of being an outsider, like I was merely a means to an end, a walking, talking ATM. After everything I had given, they still saw me as less than, as someone who didn't belong. That night, standing alone outside the restaurant, clutching the damning $3,000 receipt, I finally saw them clearly, and more importantly, I saw myself. I wasn't some lost girl desperately seeking validation. I had built my life from the ground up, overcoming countless obstacles and working tirelessly to achieve my goals. I didn't need them, and I certainly didn't need to prove my worth to people who were incapable of seeing anything beyond their own narrow prejudices. They thought they had pushed me aside, marginalized me, and relegated me to the role of the silent benefactor. What they didn't realize was that they had inadvertently given me the reason, the impetus, to stop holding back, to unleash the force that had been simmering beneath the surface for far too long. In the days following that disastrous dinner, I was consumed by a relentless stream of thoughts. My mind replayed every interaction, every transaction, every subtle slight I had endured since we got married. I started meticulously documenting everything. I pulled out old bank statements, credit card receipts, text messages, anything that could serve as tangible evidence of my financial contributions to our marriage. I didn't have a specific plan in mind. I simply needed to see it all laid out before me, the truth in black and white. I began with the rent. I had been paying it in full every single month since we moved in together. Mark always promised to reimburse me for his half later, but later never seemed to arrive. I moved on to the car. We primarily used my reliable Honda Civic, which I had purchased outright with my own savings. I paid for the gas, the insurance, and the routine maintenance. Whenever something broke down, I was the one who researched the problem, negotiated with the mechanic, and footed the bill. Then I delved into the quagmire of holidays and special occasions. Every birthday gift, every Mother's Day and Father's Day card, every extravagant Christmas present for his entire family. I had paid for it all. I even remembered the time I impulsively bought Bethany a designer handbag for her wedding, a gesture that cost me nearly $1,000. Mark had convinced me that it was a family tradition, and that it would make a good impression, so I reluctantly agreed, even though I barely knew her. Even the honeymoon, a lavish 2-week getaway to the Bahamas, had been entirely funded by me. The flights, the 5-star hotel, the gourmet meals, the excursions, it was all on my credit card. Mark had claimed that his account was temporarily frozen at the time, and that he would take care of things on our next trip. Of course, there never was a next trip. I continued to meticulously comb through my records, uncovering a litany of smaller expenses that had slipped my mind. Groceries, phone bills, household repairs, clothes, all those times Mark promised he'd get the next one. A promise that remained perpetually unfulfilled. A wave of nausea washed over me as the list grew longer and longer, a damning indictment of my own naivete and misplaced generosity. I added it all up, running the calculations multiple times to ensure accuracy. In just 2 years of marriage, I had spent over $70,000 propping up their lavish lifestyle and keeping everything afloat. The sheer magnitude of the sum shocked me. I hadn't even realized it was that much. I had simply continued to give, fueled by the misguided belief that that's what people in love do, that sacrifice and generosity were the cornerstones of a strong relationship. But looking at it now, it didn't feel like love. It felt like exploitation, like I had been deliberately manipulated and taken advantage of. That dinner wasn't an isolated incident, a mere blip on the radar. It wasn't just about them conveniently forgetting their wallets or rudely asking me to leave the table. It was part of a larger, deeply ingrained pattern of behavior, a consistent and calculated effort to exploit my generosity and keep me in my place. I had always been the one giving, the one sacrificing, the one bending over backwards to please them, and they had always been the ones taking, demanding, and expecting, their entitlement growing bolder with each passing day. And Mark, he never once intervened. Not once did he say, "She's done enough." Not once did he stand up for me or offer a genuine word of gratitude. He acted as if it were normal, as if I owed them something, as if my financial contributions were simply my wifely duty. As I continued to compile my list, a profound transformation began to take place within me. It wasn't a sudden, explosive eruption of anger. It was a slow, creeping sense of cold, unadulterated clarity. I had been willfully blind for far too long, allowing myself to be manipulated and taken advantage of in the name of love and acceptance. I had thought I was building a life with someone who genuinely cared for me, someone who appreciated my efforts and respected my boundaries. But all I was doing was funding a lie, enabling their parasitic lifestyle, and perpetuating a cycle of abuse. They wanted to treat me like I didn't matter, like I was just the person who paid the bills and kept my mouth shut. But I was done with that role. I wasn't consumed by blind rage, the kind that makes you shout and lash out indiscriminately. I was calm, resolute, and terrifyingly ready. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do yet, but I knew this with unwavering certainty. I would never, ever, allow them to take advantage of me again. A few days after the dinner from hell, I sat down with Mark, forcing a smile and adopting the demeanor of a contrite and loving wife. I told him I was sorry, that maybe I had overreacted to the family dinner. I said I wanted to make things better with his family, to bridge the divide that had formed between us. I spoke softly, choosing my words carefully, and deliberately played the role they expected of me, the submissive, eager-to-please wife. Inside, however, I felt nothing but a chilling emptiness. On the outside, I was the picture of kindness and concern. I told him I had a special idea, a weekend getaway, just his family at a beautiful cabin in the mountains. I would book a secluded retreat with breathtaking views, a serene lake for leisurely boat rides, and a large, fully equipped kitchen for preparing shared meals. He looked genuinely surprised at first, then a slow smile spread across his face, a look of smug satisfaction that made my stomach churn. He hugged me tightly, showering me with empty platitudes and telling me how much this meant to him. He acted like he had won something, like he had successfully manipulated me back into submission. Soon after, I casually mentioned the weekend trip to his parents and sister. They were ecstatic, their faces lighting up with unbridled enthusiasm. Eleanor, in a rare moment of apparent approval, said, "See, dear, I knew you weren't so bad after all." Bethany sent me a flurry of saccharine text messages filled with heart emojis, praising my thoughtfulness and generosity. They all acted as if I had come crawling back, begging for their forgiveness, desperate to regain my place in their esteemed family. I assured them that they didn't need to bring a thing, that I would cover all the expenses. The food, the gas, even a selection of their favorite wines. I went out of my way to make them feel special, showering them with attention and compliments. I framed it as a gift, something I genuinely wanted to do from the bottom of my heart. What they didn't know was that I had meticulously booked every single detail of the trip under my name. The luxurious cabin, the spacious rental van, the catered food orders, the pontoon boat rental, every transaction, every reservation, every point of contact was directly linked to me. I also made sure to scrutinize the rental agreement for the cabin, paying close attention to the fine print. The booking was for a specific time period only, with strict adherence to the check-in and check-out times. The digital access codes would automatically expire precisely at the designated checkout time. The security cameras surrounding the property were programmed to alert me immediately if any damage occurred. The rules were stringent, and the penalties for violating them were substantial, but I deliberately omitted that crucial information from my conversations with Mark and his family. I wanted them to believe they had complete control, that they were free to indulge in their usual reckless and entitled behavior. I planned every aspect of the weekend down to the minute. I deliberately chose a remote cabin far from the city, nestled deep in the woods, ensuring maximum privacy and minimal outside interference. I knew they would love it, with its rustic charm, breathtaking views, and luxurious amenities. I knew they would think I had finally forgiven them, that I was desperately trying to fit in again, to prove my loyalty to their family. I acted giddy with excitement, spending hours poring over interior design blogs, selecting matching towels and linens in soothing earth tones, and even printing out personalized welcome cards with cheesy inspirational quotes. I baked homemade cookies, carefully arranging them in decorative tins, and packed a selection of classic board games, feigning enthusiasm for an evening of wholesome family fun. Everything was meticulously crafted to appear perfect, a picture-perfect facade of domestic bliss. I made it seem as though I was doing all of this out of the goodness of my heart, motivated by a genuine desire to foster closer bonds with Mark's family. But it wasn't about kindness, forgiveness, or any of those sentimental notions. It was about demonstrating my capabilities, showing them just how easily I could provide them with the lifestyle they had come to expect. And more importantly, it was about showing them how easily I could take it all away. I didn't raise my voice, I didn't engage in petty arguments, and I never once brought up the humiliating dinner at Le Fleur. I allowed them to believe what they wanted, to bask in their delusion of superiority. I let Mark brag to his friends about how thoughtful and generous I was, how I really knew how to take care of everyone, and they all smiled and nodded in agreement, their eyes gleaming with envy. No one thought to ask how much it cost. No one offered to contribute. Just like always, they simply accepted my generosity as their due, their entitlement seemingly boundless. That weekend was going to be the culmination of my charade, the final act in a carefully orchestrated performance. I wasn't going to waste my breath explaining myself or attempting to earn their respect. I wasn't going to succumb to tears or emotional outbursts. I was calm, collected, and eerily quiet, but every move I made, every word I uttered, was calculated, deliberate, and infused with a hidden purpose. They had laughed at me after I paid the restaurant bill, treating me like a fool and dismissing my feelings without a second thought. They had smiled condescendingly, acting as if I was lucky to be in their presence, as if I should be grateful for their crumbs of attention. Now they were unwittingly walking into a trap, completely oblivious to the carefully laid snare that awaited them. I had meticulously planned every moment to appear flawless on the surface, but hidden beneath the veneer of comfort and luxury, I had subtly sown the seeds of their impending downfall. I left small, almost imperceptible clues, ensuring that everything was unequivocally registered in my name. I had backup plans for every conceivable scenario, contingencies in place to address any unforeseen circumstances. And most importantly, I had a final, devastating step prepared, something they wouldn't see coming, a move so audacious it would leave them reeling. They thought this weekend was a gift, a testament to my unwavering loyalty and boundless generosity. They were partially right. It was a gift, but not for them. It was a gift to myself, a quiet act of self-preservation disguised as a gesture of goodwill. A subtle yet powerful goodbye, wrapped in a cloak of kindness, with a shocking twist they would never forget. The weekend finally arrived, ushered in by a wave of anticipation and nervous energy. Everyone packed their designer luggage with an air of giddy excitement, chattering incessantly about the lavish amenities and picturesque surroundings that awaited them. Mark was in particularly high spirits, smiling more than I had seen him smile in months. He kept repeating how amazing the trip was going to be, how much he appreciated my thoughtfulness. His parents and sister were equally eager to escape their mundane lives and immerse themselves in a weekend of luxury and pampering. They donned expensive jackets and oversized sunglasses, acting as if they were heading to a private resort in the Swiss Alps. When we finally arrived at the cabin, a collective gasp of awe escaped their lips. The place was even more breathtaking than the online photos had suggested. The walls were constructed of warm, inviting cedar. The large windows offered panoramic views of the shimmering lake, and a steaming hot tub beckoned from the expansive deck. Inside, the cabin was even more impressive. The furniture was stylish and comfortable. The rooms were spacious and well appointed, and the air was filled with the invigorating scent of fresh pine and new wood. They looked genuinely impressed, their eyes wide with undisguised admiration. Eleanor, with a rare display of genuine enthusiasm, said, "Wow, you really went all out, dear." I simply smiled demurely and said, "Only the best for family." I gave them a guided tour of the cabin, pointing out the luxurious amenities and personalized touches I had painstakingly arranged. Each room featured plush blankets, fluffy robes, and an assortment of gourmet treats I had carefully selected in advance. I had even printed out whimsical little signs with their names on them, placing them on the doors of their respective bedrooms for a touch of personalized flair. They laughed and said it was cute, their initial skepticism seemingly melting away. I poured glasses of chilled white wine for everyone and started preparing dinner while they relaxed and settled in, basking in the glow of their newfound opulence. That first night, I went out of my way to prepare their favorite dishes, laboring for hours in the kitchen to create a culinary masterpiece. I allowed them to sit back and enjoy the fruits of my labor, serving the meal with flickering candles and soothing background music. They all showered me with compliments, their words dripping with syrupy praise. Bethany, never one to miss an opportunity for flattery, declared, "You're such a good hostess, dear. Mark is so lucky to have you." Richard, his mouth full of roasted duck, chimed in, "Our son is a fortunate man. You're a real keeper." Mark, predictably, just smiled proudly, basking in the reflected glory of my efforts. No one offered to help with the dishes. They never did. The next day, I had pre-booked a series of luxurious spa services at a nearby resort, treating them to massages, facials, and manicures. In the afternoon, I chartered a private boat for a scenic tour of the lake, complete with champagne and gourmet appetizers. They reveled in every second of the pampering, their faces beaming with pure, unadulterated joy. I took countless photos of them, capturing their laughter and their blissful expressions. I laughed at their silly jokes, acting as if everything was absolutely perfect, as if there wasn't a single cloud on the horizon. They talked incessantly about how amazing the weekend was, how kind I had been to plan it all, how much they appreciated my efforts. Mark walked around like a king, basking in the glow of their adoration. He kept saying things like, "See, she really knows how to treat people," his voice oozing with smug self-satisfaction. They thought I was back to my old self, that I had finally come to my senses and accepted my role as their dutiful servant. They believed I had let everything go, that the humiliation and disrespect I had endured at Le Fleur had simply vanished from my memory. No one mentioned the dinner. They assumed it was forgotten, a minor hiccup in the smooth fabric of our relationship. I let them believe it, perpetuating the illusion of harmony and contentment. I was calm, kind, and generous throughout the entire weekend, anticipating their every need and showering them with attention. I made sure they had everything they wanted. Extra snacks, thick blankets for the chilly evenings, and an endless supply of their favorite wines. I asked them about their lives, listening attentively to their stories and feigning interest in their mundane anecdotes. I did everything right, playing the role of the perfect wife and daughter-in-law to the best of my ability. I catered to their every whim, suppressed my own feelings, and pretended to be someone I was not. But all the while, I was secretly plotting my revenge, meticulously laying the groundwork for their ultimate downfall. And I left one crucial thing behind, a carefully placed reminder of their callous behavior, a silent accusation that would shatter their carefully constructed facade of innocence. In the bedroom that Mark and I were sharing, on the nightstand beside the bed, I placed a meticulously printed copy of the restaurant receipt. I had folded it neatly, ensuring that the $3,000 total was clearly visible. On top of it, I placed a small, handwritten note that simply said, "Never forget." I didn't mention it. I didn't draw attention to it. I just left it there, lying in plain sight, like a quiet whisper in the darkness, a constant reminder of their selfishness and my enduring resentment. The weekend continued to unfold smoothly, the days passing in a blur of laughter, relaxation, and forced camaraderie. They played board games, told stories around the fireplace, and praised Mark effusively, showering him with compliments and admiration. They kept saying how happy they were that I was finally acting like part of the family, their words laced with condescension and thinly veiled judgment. But that one piece of paper, that small, innocuous reminder of their past transgressions, sat in plain sight, waiting patiently for its moment to ignite. The cabin was warm and inviting, the food was delicious, and they were thoroughly relaxed, their guards lowered by the intoxicating combination of wine and indulgence. They didn't notice that something was different, that beneath the surface of forced smiles and polite conversation, a storm was brewing. They didn't realize that behind every kind word and thoughtful gesture, I was quietly watching, observing their every move, and meticulously calculating my next step. They didn't know that this weekend wasn't a gesture of gratitude, a heartfelt thank you for their unwavering support. It was a message, a carefully crafted warning, and I had only just begun. The weekend felt like a resounding success, a triumph of forced harmony and suppressed resentment. Everyone was full, happy, and utterly relaxed. They had eaten gourmet meals, taken hundreds of photos to document their blissful escape, and soaked for hours in the bubbling hot tub, their muscles aching from the sheer exertion of doing absolutely nothing. They kept saying how this was the best trip they'd had in years, how much they appreciated my efforts to create such a memorable experience. Mark was particularly proud of himself, basking in the glow of their praise and acting as if he had orchestrated the entire event. Every time someone complimented the weekend, he beamed with self-satisfaction, acting as if he had single-handedly earned their admiration. That last evening, they opened a few more bottles of vintage wine, their inhibitions lowered by the copious amounts of alcohol they had consumed throughout the weekend. They sat in the hot tub under the starlit sky, laughing boisterously and sharing stories of their past adventures. Eleanor, emboldened by the wine, talked about planning another family trip soon, suggesting that we make it an annual tradition. Bethany jokingly suggested that I should always be in charge of planning vacations from now on, declaring that I had a knack for creating unforgettable experiences. They were completely oblivious to the fact that I was already finished with all of them, that this weekend was the final chapter in our twisted saga, the last time I would ever subject myself to their manipulative games and condescending remarks. While they were sipping wine and lounging in the bubbling water, oblivious to my movements, I quietly packed a small bag with only the bare essentials. I had already placed everything I needed in the trunk of my car earlier that day, taking advantage of a moment when they were distracted. I didn't slam any doors or make any unnecessary noise. I left the lights off, moving carefully through the cabin to avoid detection. No one noticed me slipping away, their attention completely consumed by their own self-indulgent revelry. I got into my car and drove slowly down the winding mountain road, the headlights cutting through the darkness. I drove to a small, unassuming cafe a few miles from the cabin, a place that opened early to cater to the needs of weary travelers and early risers. The cafe was warm and inviting, the windows glowing with a soft, welcoming light. I ordered a cup of steaming jasmine tea and sat by the window, gazing out at the pre-dawn landscape. I opened my phone and composed a short, concise text message to Mark. The reservation ends at 7 a.m. tomorrow. Hope you brought your wallet. I turned off my phone immediately after sending the message, severing all ties to their world, at least for the time being. The cabin was equipped with state-of-the-art digital locks and automatic access codes. I had personally set the checkout time when I booked the reservation, deliberately choosing an early hour to maximize their discomfort. At precisely 7 a.m. sharp, the access codes would automatically expire. The doors would lock, the alarm system would activate, and they would be effectively trapped inside. And since everything was registered under my name, no one else could contact the property owner or gain access to the cabin without my explicit permission. They were completely and utterly at my mercy. I sipped my tea slowly, savoring the quiet solitude and watching the sun slowly rise over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of pink, orange, and gold. I closed my eyes and imagined them waking up after a long night of drinking, their heads throbbing, their mouths dry and parched, wet towels scattered on the bathroom floor, empty bottles strewn across the coffee table, the remnants of their self-indulgent revelry serving as a stark reminder of their excess. Then, someone would try to open the door, eager to get some fresh air or retrieve something from the car, but the door wouldn't budge. Panic would begin to set in, a creeping sense of unease that would quickly escalate into full-blown hysteria. They'd try all the doors, jiggling the handles frantically, their faces contorted with growing frustration. They'd check the windows, searching for a way out, but find them all securely locked and sealed. They'd desperately search for the access code, frantically punching in various combinations, but to no avail. They'd call out for me, their voices rising in a chorus of confusion and mounting alarm. They'd search every corner of the cabin, tearing through drawers and rifling through closets, desperate to find some sign of my presence. But I would be gone, vanished without a trace, leaving them to fend for themselves in the unfamiliar wilderness. No phone calls would go through, the signal too weak to penetrate the dense foliage that surrounded the cabin. Mark would check his messages, his eyes widening with disbelief as he reread the single text message I had left him. He would read it over and over again, the meaning slowly dawning on him, the realization that I had finally walked away, leaving him and his family stranded in the middle of nowhere. I could picture them standing outside the cabin, half-dressed, barefoot, or still clad in the wet clothes they had worn in the hot tub the night before. No ride, no access to the house, no idea what to do next. They were completely isolated, their pampered existence shattered by the harsh reality of their own incompetence. Eventually, they would be forced to swallow their pride and call for help, their voices trembling with a mixture of fear and embarrassment. Maybe they'd manage to get a weak signal and order an Uber, the driver undoubtedly snickering at their disheveled appearance and the preposterous situation they had found themselves in. Maybe they'd be forced to walk down the long, gravel road leading away from the cabin, desperately hoping that someone would pass by and offer them a ride. But no matter what, they would leave that cabin cold, confused, and utterly humiliated, their sense of entitlement shattered by the force of my calculated revenge. They had laughed when they thought I was weak, when they believed I would continue to tolerate their abuse and disrespect. They had smiled condescendingly when I paid the bill at Le Fleur, secure in their belief that I was nothing more than a convenient source of income. They had rested comfortably while I worked tirelessly to please them, taking my efforts for granted and treating me like a glorified servant. Now they were standing in the mess they had created, left to grapple with the consequences of their own actions. And I wasn't there to clean it up, to smooth things over, to make excuses for their appalling behavior. I didn't need to scream, to argue, or to offer any explanations. They would figure it out on their own, piece by excruciating piece. I had done everything quietly, meticulously, and without a single outward display of anger. But the message was loud and clear, a resounding declaration of my newfound independence and unwavering resolve. I finished my tea, took a deep breath of the crisp morning air, and looked out at the open road ahead. This time I was driving towards peace, towards a future free from their toxic influence. And they were finally, irrevocably, left behind. When I got back home after the disastrous weekend, I didn't waste any time wallowing in self-pity or second-guessing my decisions. I already knew what I had to do, the steps I needed to take to sever all ties to Mark and his family. I walked into our apartment, a place I had painstakingly furnished and decorated with my own money, looked around, and felt nothing. The place felt cold and sterile, despite being clean and well-maintained. I had paid for every single aspect of it, from the rent to the furniture to the artwork on the walls, and now I was utterly, irrevocably done. The first thing I did was open my laptop. I went straight to the bank's website and meticulously removed my name from every joint account we shared. I closed the joint savings account, transferring my portion of the funds to a secure account under my sole control. I changed the passwords for anything that had my name or my money linked to it, ensuring that Mark could no longer access my financial information. I also blocked him from using my credit cards, knowing that he had saved copies of the numbers on his phone. I didn't want him to spend another single dollar that rightfully belonged to me. Next, I dealt with the car. It was technically under both our names, but I was the one who had made all the payments since day one. I had paid the down payment, covered the insurance premiums, and made every monthly installment. I called the dealership and explained that I wanted to sell it back, effectively terminating the loan agreement. They informed me of the necessary procedures, and I handled it all the next day, efficiently and without hesitation. I didn't even bother telling Mark. He could figure it out for himself when he went looking for it. Then, I drafted an email to a reputable divorce attorney, someone known for their aggressive advocacy and unwavering commitment to protecting their clients' interests. I didn't cry, I didn't hesitate, and I didn't allow myself to succumb to the maudlin emotions that threatened to overwhelm me. I simply explained the situation in clear, concise terms, outlining the reasons for my decision and requesting that they initiate the divorce process immediately. The lawyer responded quickly, acknowledging my request and asking for detailed information regarding our assets, liabilities, and financial history. I had already anticipated this, having meticulously gathered every relevant document and piece of evidence. I had saved every receipt, every text message, every credit card statement, every bank transaction. I had irrefutable proof of everything I had done, every dollar I had spent, every sacrifice I had made. I compiled all the information into a comprehensive dossier and sent it to the lawyer, confident that I had built an airtight case. But I wasn't finished yet. I had one more card to play, a final, devastating blow that would expose their greed and selfishness for all the world to see. I created a detailed spreadsheet, listing every single expense I had covered since we got married. Rent, groceries, clothing, gifts, vacations, utility bills, Mark's personal spending habits, family events. I itemized everything, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant. I even added the cost of streaming services, new furniture, and the countless gallons of gasoline I had pumped into my car while Mark sat idly in the passenger seat. I added everything, ensuring that no expense was overlooked. Then, I calculated the total, triple-checking my figures to guarantee absolute accuracy. The final sum was staggering, exceeding $70,000 by a significant margin. After calculating the principal amount, I decided to add interest, compounding their financial irresponsibility and highlighting the extent of their exploitation. I researched the prevailing interest. After spending $3,000, the sting of their dismissive treatment, like I was some outsider, lingered long after the meal was over. I documented the entire ordeal. The ill-fated trip, the abrupt and humiliating exit, and the audacity of that exorbitant invoice. My intention wasn't to solicit sympathy or advice. I simply felt a burning need to expose the truth, to shed light on the ugliness they'd so casually inflicted. Little did I know my post would detonate overnight. The comments poured in a tidal wave of reactions. Many expressed sheer disbelief, shocked by the sheer callousness of their behavior. Others were enraged on my behalf, their anger mirroring my own. A chorus of voices echoed, "You did the right thing." And then came the stories, a flood of shared experiences from those who had suffered similar betrayals. The post migrated to other subreddits, snowballing into a trending phenomenon. Someone even immortalized the restaurant photo in a meme, sarcastically captioning it, $3,000 well spent. But the situation was far from humorous. It was about to escalate. Then the inevitable happened. Someone from my husband's workplace stumbled upon the post. The internet, with its uncanny ability to connect disparate threads, began piecing everything together. Screenshots from his and his family's public social media accounts surfaced, revealing a disturbing pattern. Old comments, dripping with disdain for gold diggers, lazy wives, and the need to keep women in line, were unearthed and relentlessly reposted. The internet showed no mercy. His company was tagged incessantly, bombarded with emails demanding accountability. A few days later, I received word from a mutual acquaintance. He had been quietly let go. No official reason was given, but we both knew the truth. His family, predictably, attempted to mount a counteroffensive. His mother posted a lengthy, self-righteous diatribe online, accusing me of betraying the family's sacred trust. But their efforts were futile. The court of public opinion had already rendered its verdict. The truth had been laid bare, and the internet, that unforgiving beast, rarely forgets. For once, they were forced to confront the shame they had so readily projected onto me for years. I refused to gloat, to descend to their level of pettiness. I didn't respond to their desperate messages or engage in their futile attempts at justification. I remained silent, a detached observer as their carefully constructed facade crumbled around them. For years, they had belittled me, exploited my generosity, and treated me as an afterthought. Now, the world could see them for who they truly were. This wasn't about revenge, about settling scores. It was about reclaiming my voice, about declaring that I was done hiding, done pleasing, and done remaining silent in the face of their abuse. They had foolishly believed they could treat me with impunity. Now, they were forced to live with the consequences of their actions. With the dust settling, I decided to book a solo vacation, a sanctuary dedicated entirely to myself. No obligations, no compromises, no expectations to meet. I chose a secluded spot by the beach, a haven where I could fall asleep to the rhythmic lull of the waves and awaken to the gentle caress of the morning sun. I abandoned the tyranny of schedules, surrendering to the whims of my own body and soul. I slept when I was tired, ate whatever my heart desired, and wandered aimlessly along the shore, liberated from the incessant demands of my phone. I rediscovered forgotten books, their pages filled with stories that resonated with my newfound freedom. I watched the sunset paint the sky in vibrant hues each evening and immersed myself in the music I had once loved, the melodies a nostalgic reminder of the woman I used to be. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I felt like myself again. I remembered the intoxicating sensation of being truly free, not just free from their suffocating control, but free to simply exist as myself, without guilt, without fear, without the constant need for validation. Returning home, I embarked on the slow, deliberate process of rebuilding my life. I refused to be rushed, embracing the beauty of simplicity. I poured my energy into my work, reconnected with the friends who had always offered unwavering support, and finally purged my apartment of the lingering remnants of the past. Eventually, I cautiously dipped my toes back into the dating pool, not out of neediness, but out of a desire to explore the possibilities that lay before me. I encountered kind, respectful individuals, people who valued my voice and didn't expect me to shoulder the weight of the world. Felt refreshing, exhilarating. I also rekindled my old passions. I returned to painting, a creative outlet I had abandoned during the suffocating confines of my marriage. I joined a weekend hiking group, embracing the invigorating challenge of the trails. I even picked up a guitar, embracing the joy of learning something new, simply for the fun of it. All the dormant fragments of my former self began to resurface, and I welcomed them with open arms. I fundamentally altered the way I interacted with people, establishing firm boundaries that no one could cross. I refused to be silenced, refused to be manipulated into compromising my own well-being. If someone attempted to overstep, I walked away, shielding my newfound peace as if it were the most precious of treasures. Because it was. The Reddit post continued to resonate, its impact far exceeding my initial expectations. Months later, I was still receiving messages from strangers, their words a testament to the power of shared experiences. Some expressed their gratitude, saying, "You gave me strength." Others hailed me as a hero. Many simply said, "Thank you for speaking up." It was humbling, deeply gratifying to know that my story had touched so many lives. People shared their own harrowing experiences, women, men, even couples who had endured similar betrayals. They found solace in my story, a sense of solidarity in knowing they were not alone. That realization made everything I had endured feel worthwhile. One night, I sat alone on my balcony, gazing up at the star-studded sky, and reflected on the journey that had brought me to this point. For years, I had diminished myself, contorted myself to fit into their narrow world. I had acquiesced when my heart screamed for dissent. I had remained silent when I should have roared. I had given and given, paid and waited, all in the desperate pursuit of love, approval and peace. But in the process I had lost myself. Now I was done shrinking. I no longer needed their world, their validation. I had my own, and it was mine to shape freely and fully. I wasn't trying to prove anything to anyone. I was simply living, and that was enough. A few months drifted by, each day a quiet affirmation of my newfound autonomy. Then, one seemingly ordinary afternoon, I retrieved my mail and noticed a pristine white envelope, adorned with elegant gold lettering. The return address was unfamiliar, but as I opened the envelope, a wry smile crept across my face. It was a wedding invitation from my ex-husband's sister. She was remarrying and, for reasons I couldn't fathom, had decided to extend an invitation to me. Perhaps she naively believed I had moved on, conveniently forgetting the depth of their betrayal. Perhaps she thought I would be flattered by the gesture, honored to be included in their charade of familial harmony. Or perhaps, more cynically, she simply wanted to appear magnanimous, projecting an image of forgiveness and reconciliation. The card contained all the standard wedding details: date, time, dress code, but it was the RSVP card that caught my attention. At the bottom was a space designated for dietary restrictions. I stared at that blank space for a long moment, a silent battle raging within me. Then, I picked up a pen and wrote a single, defiant line. "I don't eat with people who throw me out after I feed them." But I wasn't finished. I retrieved the meticulously preserved restaurant receipt from my drawer, the same one from that fateful night when I had paid $3,000 for dinner, only to be banished outside while they enjoyed their family moment. I had saved that receipt, flat and unblemished, as a quiet reminder of their true character. I carefully folded the RSVP card and tucked it into the envelope. Then, I slid the receipt in behind it, fully visible, untouched and unfolded, a silent accusation. I added one final touch, a small card bearing a simple, yet devastating message. They should have kept the receipt. I was always going to return the favor. Then, I sealed the envelope and mailed it, without a moment's hesitation. I didn't wait for a response. Didn't waste time wondering what they would say. I already knew. They might label me as rude, accuse me of being dramatic. But deep down, they would understand the profound message embedded within that seemingly insignificant piece of paper. That receipt was more than just a financial record. It was a symbol of the line they had crossed, a moment they had dismissed as insignificant, but one I would never forget. They thought I was defeated, that I would remain silent. They were wrong. Sometimes the most powerful response is silence, punctuated by a message they will never be able to erase. And this time, it was their turn to feel small, to experience the sting of humiliation. Betrayal isn't the end. It's the catalyst for your strength. Share this with someone who needs hope today. Like, comment, and follow for real-life moments of healing, self-love, and quiet courage. Your journey to peace and power begins now. You're not alone. Let's walk this new path forward together.